Hey everybody, welcome to the Salt City 7. We're trying something a little different this week. Usually the Salt City 7 starts with a longer exploration of a bigger question in writing. But hey, reading is hard. So this week we're experimenting with making this little opening soapbox, opening ramble, a video component just to make the Salt City 7 a little more dynamic. So let me know if you like this more or less than the other format. So the Jazz have now lost 8 of 9 and they're 5-14 since mid-January. You know the stats. The effort has also been a little up and down as reality has started to set in on where the season is likely headed. Although the Jazz played pretty well in coming up short in Miami and even Orlando. But all of that has led to some understandable fan frustration. And one of the common criticisms right now is this concept of pick a lane, right? And I think that's worth exploring. I think the phrase seems to assume that the Jazz were laser focused on a playoff appearance and that now they're focused on driving toward the bottom of the standings, and that the duality there has led them into a fairly damning middle. So this week's big question is exactly that. Did the Jazz change plans midstream after focusing on a playoff berth? This week, people have been pointing to a particular headline from a Danny Ainge preseason press conference as proof positive that the Jazz had a plan in October and that said plan involved a postseason experience. But if you go dig deeper into that press conference, you'll see that Ainge actually put a pretty big asterisk on that "let's go make the playoffs" declaration just a few minutes later. Ainge did in fact say, yeah, we want to be in the playoffs. Let's get there. I want to be in the playoffs too, Lowry. Let's go. Do something. But later in the same interview, he added this. As I sat there last year, I would say that my expectations weren't super high for our team because there were so many unknowns and I know how hard it is to win in this league. And I would say our team exceeded expectations last year, not because of the amount of wins as much as how they played, how they grew as a team. So I think that there's a lot of factors that go into success, but we want to make the playoffs, that's everybody's goal. And we're going to set out to do that. That's what Will's message is. We're trying to win opening night, the next night, and every night after. And hopefully we stay healthy and play to our best. But there's different ways to measure success. So that's an interesting way to end that. He does say we want to make the playoffs. He's responding there to Lowry because in the question that set up that answer, they're talking about how Lowry had mentioned wanting to make the playoffs. But honestly, I was always confused at the perception expressed by some that the Jazz were determined to make the postseason. That's just not how I interpreted their goals for the year. Look, even at their absolute zenith, when they peaked at 22-20, they were 9th in the West. So for me, if even at your peak, you're pacing towards being play-in underdogs, needing to win 2 games just to have a shot at being first-round roadkill to a top seed, I just couldn't imagine that being the primary aspiration or measure of success. But allowing for the fact that maybe I'm the one who heard selectively or remembered wrong, I went to see what other Jazz decision makers were saying back in October about the playoffs as a goal. Here's Will Hardy. I want to be clear that while we say we want to figure out what this group is and figure out the best path forward and who fits together, we're going to come at this season like we did last year, with a really high competitive spirit, and we're trying to win every night. Whether that results in us making the playoffs, play-in, so forth, we'll find out. There isn't a line we've set to say this would be a success this year and anything short of that would be a failure. Okay, interesting. Justin Zanuck, in a conversation with JP Chunga in October, said, our expectations last year were we're going to try to play hard, play together, have a coach who was an excellent teacher, try to maximize the abilities of our roster, and then see where we're at. Coach and the players did a great job of that, and I would expect this year more of the same. Now, to me, those sound wildly different from we're going to try to make the playoffs no matter what, and we'll be disappointed if we don't. I also know what Larry Markkinen said in October. And hey, I also know that when Buddy Hield makes the postseason this April with Philadelphia, that Lowry will become the active player with the most games and minutes played, but no playoff appearances. I hate that for Lowry. I really do, so I empathize with him. But I still can't read those quotes from Justin, from Danny, from Will, and think that the organization was hell-bent on the postseason above all else. And that's kind of the problem with the pick a lane dialogue, or at least the most oversimplified and reductive version of it, because it makes it sound like there are only 2 options to choose from. 1, go pedal to the metal to try to squeeze every win possible out of the present day group so that you can get a playoff participation ribbon. Or 2, commit to being as bad as possible, as early as possible to maximize draft odds. And if you really think those are the only 2 options available to the Jazz, then yeah, it could look like they had a plan and then hastily abandoned it for its polar opposite. But those quotes tell me that the decision makers weren't thinking playoffs or bust in December and January, nor are they thinking let's tank today. So what was the plan, and is it the same one today? Well, look, when I heard from Jazz people in October or December or right before the trade deadline or now, to me the plan has always sounded the same. That they wanted to be as competitive as they could, sure, but mostly as a means to provide meaningful context for player growth, evaluate what they have, and gather more information about who could and should be part of a competitive future team. Now, all things being equal, I think if they could have done those things like developing players and fact-finding and accomplished all of that while still making the playoffs, I think they would have embraced that. But we just heard the three main basketball decision makers hop in a time machine from October and tell present-day us that there are other ways to define success. So when I hear that people are upset that the plan's changed, I would actually respond to that in two ways. First, I don't think they actually did. I think the plan all along was those other things we just talked about, and along the way to be open to opportunities to improve the asset situation by being realistic about what's core and what's non-core. Frankly, to me, that's at least as coherent and productive a strategy, if not more so, than being so focused on chasing a 9th or an 8th or a 10th seed that you cling to the wrong things over development opportunities and good asset opportunities. It's also at least as coherent and productive of a plan, if not more so, than entering the season with no intention of playing meaningful basketball and wasting a year of guys' careers and lives having them try to play and develop in the context of meaningless games. So right now, we're starting to see what the Jazz will look like as they simply play out the string. And I think if we had to watch that from day one, we would have learned so much less about these guys and what works, what's relevant to the future. But the second thing I would tell that person is, even if the plan did change, so what? Isn't that good? Don't successful organizations of all kinds adjust their strategies as new information becomes available? I mean, even if the plan was the playoffs, if the Jazz turned their whole season around with that 15-4 stretch, and even still we're sitting in 9th, at some point, isn't it a good thing that they were level-headed enough to go, hey, what's the value in chasing this? Because any way you could go has a value and a cost, and it's their job to constantly be weighing that. So maybe in October, part of the decision was that the long-term value of playing meaningful games for 2/3 of the season was worth more than, say, the value difference between the 6th and the 9th pick. And maybe part of the process in February was acknowledging that good assets and a chance to ramp up the evaluation on young players was worth more than squeezing their way to, 41 wins instead of 37 or 39 instead of 34 or whatever. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with their valuations, by the way. As a fan, you can be upset. I've read and heard over the last couple of weeks a lot of very valid positions and concerns from people who might not like what the team brass sacrificed in pursuit of their version of the plan. You're allowed to feel that way. You're allowed to be disappointed about having the final quarter of the season essentially turn into exhibition games. And certainly there will be some fans who check out for now. That's okay too. Do what you need to do what you want to do, no judgment here. For fellow sickos like me who are going to watch the games no matter what, I think there's a way to watch from a place of more intellectual curiosity rather than turning on the TV or driving to the arena with the thought of, man, the Jazz had better win tonight or this is a waste of my time and money. But again, you figure out how you want to watch and what you want to watch for. Regardless of how you plan to spend the last 21 games, it's probably worth revisiting what Ainge, Zanuck, and Hardy sounded like 5 months ago, and realizing that the way things unfolded was probably not some huge departure or mission shift. Thanks for indulging me. Read on for the rest of the Salt City 7 column and let me know if having this piece be a video segment is a good change. Thanks for listening.